perpetually. And that will provide this hollow, you know, keep this edge a little bit longer. I think this is about ideal. Normally you want a 1 millimeter or so here, and 2 or 3 up there. That's about the same for a plain blade. If you've over flattened this hollow circular thing will be a lot smaller, and you might have a whole bunch of steel up ahead here, which means you've taken your cutting steel and taken a lot too much off, so your life of your chisel will be shorter. And as you get lower and lower and lower here, you could get to a point where you ground the cutting steel off altogether. And once your hollow's gone, I mean, you think about this cutting steel being, what, 1.5 millimeters thick? And this hollow grind is how deep? So you've got maybe 1 millimeter of steel there. And this tool, you know, over its however many years you use it, depending on how often you sharpen and cut with it, you could conceivably be halfway through the life of it and already be through your cutting steel, and it's, you know, game over. So I'll start sharpening, yakking. Notice I sharpen on the floor, and okay, so I have an even grind across the front of the tool. From whatever 10 strokes on the coarse stone. And I'm going to just run my finger lightly under here to see if I can feel a wire edge. And yeah, there's a small wire edge there. So that's done.
Wire edge should be all the way across.
It should be all the way across, and don't take your finger and go across the edge, because you'll snap it off. And while you won't see it, what you've done with your here's your edge, there's your bevel, and this wire just folded over, and then you snap it back and you end up with these little broken little flakes, because the brittle steel is like in these little crystalline forms, so when it snaps, it's not going to just snap nicely across your edge. Because you won't notice that, and you'll have already finished off on your 1000 grit, snap those edges off because you're too aggressive rolling that back, and then you'll go start polishing on some other thing. You'll get through to 8000, it'll be a nice shiny looking edge. It still has these little rivulets in it, so when you go to cut with it, it won't cut cleanly.
Do you ever create a burr and use it for scraping or cleaning up joints or glue joints or stuff like that?
I guess if I might do that with, I have a couple of beater chisels over there, but I have scrapers I use to roll a burr over and do that. I think the steel is too brittle to hold a burr edge, you know. Like you roll it over, you take one pass and a scraper punch and you snap it.
So then you burnish it if you do a scraper.
With a scraper, yeah, I'll burnish and roll an edge over. I guess we can talk about scraping once in a later. That's a whole other thing.
You got a bad nick in your chisel. You got to keep that 1000 grit to get it right down. Right?
If you got a nick in your chisel, you go on the diamond stone and take it down. That's the fastest means.
So you take it more off the front than the back. Right?
Well, like this chisel, I've got the back prepared, so I'm never touching the back again to a coarse stone until I'm down to adjusting the hollow up again.
So you go over to the front.
On the front. Yeah. So I've done my 1000 grit. I've made a little wire edge. So I'm just going to put that to the side. Reflatten my stone.
Is that the diamond?
Yeah, it's a diamond.
It's a diamond stone.
When you finish flattening it, do you finish flattening it along the length or in this direction?
I
Do
don't.
you want to have the grooves running
On
across?
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually worry about that.
You don't worry about that?
Because I this stone I'm always going sideways. Sometimes I go diagonally, so you know, what if the next time I end up with it going this way? I don't know if it's going to make a difference. It does make a difference to the tool as you get into finer grits. But I think at the coarse stage, that's an interesting question though, you know, whether flattening it with this stone is going to leave marks particularly. But I think the way you've you flatten this as you're breaking away particles on this surface. So, you know, those
Right, you're not leaving troughs.
Yeah, I don't think.
If you go from side to side, it's gonna change.
Yeah, and most of it is a straight motion. You know, these side-to-side motions are trying to compensate for any particular urge I might have to. This is the stone. I just got this brand new, but you know, this is the one it replaces.
Wow.
So, if you can consistently flatten, you'll end up with a stone that, you know, it's fairly even. So that's a very slight taper, but unfortunately, I had to wait too long for this. Normally, I would like to stop using this when it's about a 1/4 inch thick, because then you can use the edges of it for gouges and stuff.
Where's the actual diamond?
Oh, they're in this plate. They're
Is it the metal part that's, or the yellow
and
part?
the yellow dots are little hollows, so the swarf can
Yeah.
have somewhere to go. Okay, so swarf. I guess that's WARF.
Swarth.
Is that Shafton stone?
That one I just used?
Yeah.
No, that's a new Kent.
That's natural.
It's a ceramic. Yeah, I have a couple of natural stones, but I frankly don't use them much.
And is Shafton the king stones that are ceramic?
Shafton ceramic. I think King is an artificial stone, but not ceramic.
With the natural particles.
I think so. It's a good stone. It cuts really well, but I find the King stones wear really fast. So, like this stone cuts as well as a King, but doesn't wear nearly as fast. So,
What brand is it?
a new Kent, new Kento.
So why would
It's like a cigarette.
why would a water stone go for $10,000?
Well, some natural stones come. You know, there's certain qualities of ore, I guess, or the strata levels, layers in rock in certain mountains are famous for having the best polishing qualities. So they're very scarce now. So yeah, some Japanese farmers will pay huge amounts of money for.
Is there any validation to that?
I don't know.
Having worked in geology for 10 years, yeah, there's huge validation in it, just the different qualities from jades to different stones and stuff. I can see where the difference, it'd be huge. I mean, it'd be a matter of taste then, you know, as to how,
You'd have to have
how
an
retarded
eye
you're
for
gonna
it,
get
yeah.
on the quality and the finesse of it, you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
some of the different stones, definitely we've seen
Is that a new chisel?
some amazing
Did you
stuff. Different
It's not brand new.
types of
I've had it a year. So I haven't been doing a lot of timber framing the last year, so it's okay. When you're working on the back, most of your time is on this front centimeter, feathering it out on the back. I use a separate bucket of water for this stone.
What good is that?
That's 10,000. The reason I've got a separate bucket of water is as you use the 1,000, you get suspended in here the particles from the coarse stones. And if you go and dunk them on here, while you're trying to sharpen with that, you've got these little rocks in there that are going to prohibit you from getting the best out of the stone you can. Now, this one's so sticky that I have to use it this way. Usually when you're doing chisels, you'll do them in a gang style, so I'll have like 5 and I'll go 5 on the course, flatten off the back, redo the stones, next stone, and it doesn't take very long.
I've got that same diamond stone, I've got the holder for it, and see you're using it on a block, or what are you doing that to support it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've used that holder before, and I think it's pretty good. I just chose to not get one with this, and I got it came with a non-skid mat anyway. This hunk of yellow cedar here seems to do the job.
So that was a big jump in grit though, wasn't it, Chris?
But I went to the back to clean off the wire burr.
Oh.
I haven't gone to the bevel yet again. Next stone for me is 2,000. Now, if you think about these stones, which stones take off the most steel? The coarse grit or the polishing grit?
Of course.
So which stones affect the shape of the tool most?
Of course. Of course.
Of course. Which stones should be rigorously kept flat?
Of course.
Usually the money goes into the finishing stone, and people kind of just use their coarse stones and not worry about it. But because they dish fast, Sharpton a little less so. I mean, the basis of getting a flat bevel is having a flat rock to rub the blade on. So keeping the coarse ones particularly flat will mean that when you later go on your polishing, you're going to have better results. So a little splash of water. Nice thing about ceramics is generally they don't need to be dunked in the pond for any length of time. You just splash on some water. So I'm keeping 2 fingers pressed really firmly on the lower edge to really keep the cutting steel, pressure on the cutting steel part. My other fingers are exerting a little bit of pressure in this direction, but mostly just keeping it still so it doesn't vibrate too much. This stone in particular will chatter or cause the blade to chatter on it. You don't keep it, it cuts fast, yeah.
So Chris, sorry to interrupt, but I have that problem of having over sharpened the bevel of both the plane blade and the chisel blades. So how do you not only prevent that?
How do you get back from that?
No, how do you prevent it to begin with? And even with the plane blade, you want a slight convex, don't you?
I go for dead flat.
Dead flat?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it's slightly convex, then it's very easy for it to become a little more convex. As soon as it's a little more, it's like the slippery slope, you know.
In the plane blade.
Yeah, because every time you resharpen, if it's convex, it's hard with something that's rolling back and forth on the stone to know how steadily you're in contact with the cutting edge. So you tend to overcompensate and make it round it even more over. You do that 4 times in a row and you get this big round thing. It's very hard to sharpen the tool. And then your effective bevel, just in a plane blade, can become very, obtuse there. Okay. If you have found by sharpening you've taken the thing, this cutting steel down way too much and your bevel is way too acute, you're going to be doing your sharpening with this thing in the air. The thing is, if you're doing it through your hands on the stone, you'll feel there's a distinct difference between cutting steel and soft steel. Soft steel is grabby. Cutting steel is hard and slides.
Can you see it too? Can you not? Is there any visual difference as you're watching the...
Well, you can take a few passes in a position and take a look. What am I taking off here? That's one way. Okay. I've done X number of passes on 2000. I'm 99% the way to an even, cleaning of the dirty mirror. Again, I could give it another few moments to get that bit out. You can think of the blade you're polishing as a dirty mirror. And each grit is getting you closer to the reflection you want. But in each time you're trying to make an even, like you start with 1,000, completely even, 1,000 grit polish. Next 2,000 in my case, completely even, 2,000 grit, 4,000 completely even, 4. It does get harder as you get into the polishing stones to get that complete mirror for the polishing stone. So then you have to decide how much time you want to put into this and what am I going to use it for. Okay, so we've done 2,000, and we get a plate, clean it off.
Do you lighten up when it's chattering? Is that how you keep it?
No, I push even more firmly. Yeah.
What grade is that diamond stone?
What do they say for black? 60 micron or 220 mesh. It's hard to compare though. Japanese grit, 2,000 grit sandpaper I think is a 1,500 grit Japanese stone. Something like that. I can't remember.
So you're using extra coarse for this work here?
Yeah, as I find with this one, if I use the coarse, it's a little grabby. Maybe not, see there, it sticks more to the stone. So now, again, to talk about the different, what's the Japanese phrase, junin toiro, which is 10 people, 10 colors. So each to his own liking, different strokes for different folks. People that have got habituated to sharpening front ways on tend to like stones that are gummy, slippery stones. People that sharpen sideways on tend to like grabbier stones. Because if you sharpen front ways on and it's a grabby stone, it'll catch your bevel and tend to make the tool do this and dip it into the stone. So you like a gummy stone, it's a slick thing to go back and forth on. And they like to use the nagura to create a slurry and all that stuff, if some of you may have read about. If you're going sideways though, you want to feel like the thing's cutting. So, you know, I know a guy who's really accomplished at sharpening, and he likes harder stones. And I like ones that have more, you know, grab. He likes really hard ones that I find I don't like it's cutting, so he gets a good result. You can't say it's anything wrong with what he's doing. So we've done a little work on the back again. That could use a little bit more off. There's the front. It's really exciting to watch somebody sharpen, isn't it?
Yeah. So it doesn't take long per each.
No, it's actually a lot easier to frequently sharpen a little bit than it is to, you know, and I get in this habit if I'm really busy and I've got 15 chisels there, so that one's dull, I'll get that one. When that one's dull, I'll get that one, and then the next day I've got 15 dull chisels. So, but if hopefully you're not so frenzied in your work pace, basically. And usually, you know, I remember when I used to work, I wasn't as sensitive to, say, on a plane blade when it was dull and when it was really sharp. And the really sharp window is short. And then there's an adequately sharp window, you know, for another 10 or 15% of the time, and then you start getting into duller and duller. And you keep pulling shavings, but yeah, I gotta pack the blade a little lower, and then all of a sudden it's like, tear out. And you're like, because you were just not patient enough to go, okay, slightly dull, go on, I'll take 2 minutes on the stone, 5 minutes, back again to razor sharp. I mean, really valuable pieces of wood, the Japanese carpenters will, you know, sharpen up, take one pass, sharpen up, take one pass.
Really?
If you have a really difficult grained piece of wood, and it's a very expensive piece of wood, you know, there's some, like red sandalwood, you know, that's almost extinct now. They make koto musical instruments. It's a zither. That's not a sort of thing you can just tear up strips out of and go, shoot, I'll get some more off the shelf and try again. Or, you know, you've got options for picking the really best grain stuff. It's so scarce that you know, the demand of getting a perfect result is such that. I got a little contamination there because I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. And then, so because I'm yakking so much, I'm taking a process that really doesn't take more than a few minutes, and dragging it out into half an hour.
So now you're concentrating on the first quarter inch from your lot copy, right?
Well, the first centimeter or so. So you start here. Basically, this area here doesn't tend to get much of that. You can go past it, but I tend to, you know, stay this way. Some people will go on an angle, but I just sideways. Back. So with this back and forth and side to side motion, you know, 80% of your sharpening is taking place on this lead surface. Okay. So I'm going to actually take this up to, I'll deal with it as if it were a plain blade, and I'll take it to 8,000 on the bevel too. Just sort of go through the pattern. This 10,000 grit is really soft and dishes fast, but it's exceptionally good polishing stone. And it's not got much life left in it at this point. you know, half of your stone is from reflattening, and the other half of the wear is from you actually putting a blade on it.
You reflatten it every use, it looks like.
Yeah, because I find this one, and that might be an argument for having a harder stone than this. I find because it tends to, you can just see when I do it on the plate for just a moment, you can see the high and low spots right away. So, yeah, I frequently reflatten that. So, next stone I go to here will be 5,000. This is for a plain blade. This is the typical sequence. I go 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10. Maybe we'll just stop at 5. So this is a finishing stone at 5,000 grit. The Sharpening 5,000 is a very grabby stone, and forget going forwards on it. Another question is how much pressure to exert while sharpening. And some people advocate a light touch. I tend to push a little harder. I guess what it comes down to is that whatever pressure you push at, can you feel what you're doing, you know, what part of the steel you're sharpening. And the more pressure, the faster you remove steel, but also the more pressure, the more possibility there is of slipping and getting into patterns where you gouge out the stone in funny ways.
And hurt your elbows?
Possibly hurt your elbows, like straining my elbows doing planing. So.
But you don't use a Gabriola stone?
I don't. I've got one. I mean, if you think about so that's after a few minutes. The effect of this stone at 5,000 grit compared to the 2,000 grit. I mean, I guess it's less than half as coarse. So to get the same effect, I've got to polish at least twice as long on that. So you can see after that amount of time, which is pretty similar to what I did on the 2000, that my polish is moved up, but I haven't got up here on the backing steel with the polish yet.
I don't understand why it's making a periphery around the mirror, as it were. Why it's getting like sort of smaller and smaller. That seems to indicate that there's some kind
Oh, dish in here?
of dish, yeah.
If I have a good answer for that. I don't believe it's a dish. I think basically because I'm focusing so much on cutting the steel, and really all the place I have to do any polishing is on the soft backing steel. So basically I just have to do a few passes and just ease off the pressure a little bit if I want a totally even surface.
So basically you are putting an emphatic pressure on the leading edge.
Yes.
And you know still from the way you're holding it that the whole surface is touching, it's just not
Right.
the same.
But my focus is on that hard steel. But I can still feel I'm moving some of the soft steel. Because if I was completely elevated, then I would know by the feel I'm only on hard steel. So I would also know if I'm a little bit too low and it's really grabby, sticky, then I'm on that soft steel only.
Now, does it still have that wire edge? Or
It'll
is
have
it
a very tiny wire edge on it, but I don't check for that anymore.
Right.
Because that's another place where, this is a chopping chisel, I don't really need to go beyond here. In fact, the cosmetics aren't really a factor anyway. I've got my edge defined at 5,000 and flatten off the back and fine. But, if you want to start each time with a tool to resharpen that's flat, you should stride each time to make it flat. And granted, when you want a coarse stone next, you'll take that off easily. So it's a bit dubious to argue for aesthetics on a chisel blade. This stone holder and stone like to do is splash it with black steel residue drops. Use the And some people, when they flatten off, they take a pencil and go shh, and then flatten that off, and that works okay. I just kind of go by light and dark spots, and I can see low, 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 a little bit here, and just go till they're gone. So whether to use the Gabriola or not, I guess depends on whether you believe that the blade riding in a slurry paste of broken up rock particles is going to lead to a better result than the blade riding back and forth on a flat, clean surface of rock particles. I don't really buy the Gabriola argument so much. So after just a few moments, I'm nearly there now here. I guess I just have to change my pressure distribution if I want to get that out.
And the slurry you have there isn't going to affect it?
What?
The slurry you have there isn't going to
Well, that's there's a mild amount of slurry, and the rest of the black stuff is actually off the steel. I can wipe that off frequently, but
It doesn't make a difference, you know?
I don't feel it. I don't let it build up to some huge amount, because then my stone's probably gotten too dished anyway. So, I'm getting closer. Then when I ask myself, okay, do I want to make this whole surface absolutely perfect? 5 more minutes work, is it worth it? How much is it I gotta do? So, I'm gonna stop there. I'm going to sharpen another chisel after this, and I'll yak less and sharpen more. We'll see. That was a relatively easy tool to do because there's so much bevel surface to work with.
So on that, that's 5,000?
That's a 5,000.
You don't take the burr off?
Oh, you mean, am I going to do the back yet?
Yeah.
That's my last step.
Oh.
It's a good idea to take your stone edges, if you feel a little sharpness, to take them down
So they don't break.
so they don't break and you don't cut yourself on them. Okay, where is mine? So, if this were a plain blade, I'd be now spending 5 or 10 minutes on this stone going back and forth. But because it's not, I'm just going to do a few strokes back and forth. And thus my polish on the 10 will not be an even flat thing right across there. But
You spend more time on like a herring chisel or push chisel than a striking one?
yeah, there's really no sense in taking a striking chisel beyond 5,000. Some would even argue beyond 2,000. But this is a $400 chisel, so I kind of pull shoe to the extent I can. If you think about a Japanese sword, there's a whole subtrade of people who polish and sharpen swords, and a sword takes a week, 8 hours a day to sharpen and polish. So that's all the guy's doing all day.
Like 3 of those people.
Swords?
Yeah, what are you gonna do with that shirt?
Oh, you go on the battlefield and hack someone's head off.
Yeah, right. That was in the old days. Nowadays, like, why would they want to sword that shirt?
They could probably chop another
Well-
sword in half.
It can do a lot of things. I studied swordsmithing for a while. Super deep art, you know, there's so much to it that it kind of boggles the mind. To me, it's the highest, like a really highly evolved form of metallurgy, a manipulation of elemental material into a work of art and, you know, technology. And yeah, there's no battlefield application for that now, which is great, maybe. I'm not sure we've really advanced far with F-15s, but I think it's a good thing we keep that skill alive. And the same with the people that polish those tools and make the hilts and make the scabbards and wrap the hilts and lacquer the scabbards. Those are all separate crafts. And
But
make the,
even at the time, 2 minutes in the battlefield, the thing's gonna look like hell anyways.
yeah.
So,
So you know there's a samurai sword in the
that's 2
Canadian
minutes
War
you're alive.
Museum?
What's that?
There's a samurai sword in the Canadian War Museum that, I think it was the only one the Japanese gave up to this woman, who was a Canadian woman, who after the war, she, well, she's getting, it was in Indonesia, when, they were gonna go for independence, and she had to bring all these refugees out, and she was in charge of the Japanese, so you say the general there couldn't believe that this woman was in charge of her, and he had so much respect for her at the end, that he gave her a samurai sword. It was the only one that was given up in that sort of way.
To give it to a woman's really unusual.
Yeah, that's what they're saying, like, this is totally amazing.
You know, the swordmaker's forge is clay in these two mounds with a trench in between. It's what they call oshiri, and it's a woman's buttocks.
Yeah.
The fire is in.
Yeah, but
They
that's
don't
what-
allow women to blacksmith, or the blacksmiths do, but the swordsmiths forget it. There's no women allowed, not even allowed to watch it. So,
Yeah, so I guess that's why this was a big deal when this general gave this woman the sword, because he had so much respect for her.
it is really unusual. I mean, I think it's a little absurd what I just said, but that's
Yeah.
the way they are. When I rub off, I'll see it. Like, it usually just comes off and it's this long little skinny thing, or two little skinny bits. And you usually just wash it off with water and it's gone.
But I've tried to kind of work away from it as I.
Right. Well, you notice when I go sideways, just by going sideways, affecting kind of a dragging motion this way, it'll come off in this area here.
Yeah.
And but yeah, if you left it on there and put your blade back on it, you could scratch.
Yeah, I've scratched my hands before from it.
So you drag back from the edge?
Yes.
I've always tried to go, get the edge in with the idea in mind, but I don't roll it.
I see, so you want to fold it under and then.
I want to cut it or kind of roll it under and cut it off.
Uh-huh.
That's what you guys have-
I've tried that. I've always backed off the way, so I'd be interested to try that, to see what it does, if there's any difference. Okay, let's go to a difficult one to sharpen. The nemesis. Nothing worse than this is the marking knife
Yeah.
with the 90-degree blade. This type of tool is hard to do freehand. So finding the bevel is a little hard to do. Keeping it fairly steady, even polish on the bevel is hard to do. But the good thing is, if you can keep your position quite well, it doesn't take very long to take the steel off.
And that's 1,000 that you're beginning with?
Yep.
Thing's good.
Now, I was going to say about the polishing stones and the final grits. I didn't really get into that with the last blade. With plane blades, particularly as you get into the finish stone, you can go from that sideways orientation into front, so you leave your scratches in line with where you plane. The blade will cut a little more smoothly than the scratches going across. You can imagine dragging across this way might be a little, you'll feel more friction than if you go through it that way. So I didn't do that with that blade. So I've basically taken that off. I can feel, yeah, there's the wear edge there. So it's not, when I look at it, I see it's not quite flat all the way up the backing steel.
That's how you avoid over sharpening the bevel.
Yeah, so I haven't, I go, good, I haven't been too slack on that. We're there. I'll give it a couple more passes.
Chris, what's the best way to keep your phones and to store your?
That's a good question. Different stones have different porosities, and ceramic stones don't need to be kept in water. They can be just splashed with water and use them. This 10,000 ceramic, so I just splash water on it. The Shaptons are all ceramic. This is ceramic. However, it's quite a coarse stone. If your stone's like 800, 1,000, or 1,200, you keep it in the pond the full time. You keep your finishing stones in the pond full time, they get gummy and soft. So,
Is that just because of the amount of time it takes to reabsorb the water for a coarse stone?
well, a coarse stone tends to be filled with more voids and air pockets, just because the rocks inside are bigger, so there's more spaces in between. And the finished stone is, there's more densely packed with little smaller particles. So when you soak it for an extended period, it kind of loosens a little bit of the bonding matrix inside, so it starts to get gummy. So I keep this stone in the water, the 1,000 in the water all the time, and the other one's not in the water at all, just on the shelf, and hopefully flat.
So it makes a difference, the position of the stone, flat or on its side, or?
Well, it's more stable on its back.
Do you have to worry about freezing the stones at all?
That would be a bad thing. That's a good question. Yeah, if you put your bucket of water outside and it freezes, you can damage your stone badly, because the stones absorb all this water inside it, and then what happens when water freezes? It expands. It can blow your stone apart. So that's something you don't want to do. Another thing to be careful of is, as the trough water gets murky like this, you want to kind of watch what you do with stones and leaving them in there, because then you take your blade in and dab it in there, like chink. Oh no! And so it's good to keep. It's nice to have a wooden trough for this reason rather than a metal one. But you put your stones where either they're completely out of the way, you can't touch them, or they're really obvious and you're not going to touch them. So the 1,000. Let me back off on the 8,000.
Do you ever use those gauges, sharpening?
You mean jigs?
Those wheels that you...
I did when I started out, but I don't anymore, and I guess I'm becoming a snob about it now. So I just found I ran into issues where I couldn't use them, and I was starting to dream up more complicated jigs to sharpen different blades.
He's talking about a little bevel gauge. For
Just
checking.
for
Oh, you see I've got one on the wall
A
over
guide,
there.
a guide.
No, you're talking about a honing guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, honing guide.
Yeah, I talked about that earlier before you came in, I guess. So, yeah, I recommended not to use those.
I find they hollow your stone quickly because you tend to use the center more.
Right, and actually some of them, the brass on the rolling wheel can get in the stone too, and
Okay.
I don't think that's really a huge concern, but it's really a simple skill. The reason I do it on the floor, I mean, there's this forward and back motion, and you want to avoid it being this way when you're going forward and back and rocking. So one way to do that is to stop your hips from moving much. So if you tend to sharpen standing, which is fine too, it's good, like if you're working against a table or something, to just block your hip. So you're just working, your arms are like hinged, they just go back and forth, as opposed to this kind of thing. Because every time you do the oomph, you're tending to, your center of gravity is moving, the blade pressure is changing.
Do you ever hone after finishing on leather?
Well, like stropping?
Yeah.
Again, I used to. I've stopped now. If you do strop only on the bevel, don't strop on the back side. Because if you strop the back side of here's your nice sharpened acute edge, and you rub a leather thing over it, you'll basically do that to it. And it won't pair. You'll have to tilt it.
How could leather have such an effect on steel?
Well, it's not the leather, it's the oxide compound you put on the leather. So the leather is a matrix to hold that in. Aluminum oxide, I think it is typically. I've got the leather strop over there, it's just collecting dust. It's one of those things, Lee Valley had it for sale, I thought I gotta have one for sharpening. And great polish. But
What about if you're like out there doing like on a project
there's some part of the job site, you can have your bucket of water, your pour stones and flattening plate.
So you don't use an oil stone?
I don't know, you use oil stones much, but if you try water stones after using oil stones, you'll go, geez, these cut fast.
Is there anything you could put like in the water so you can freeze? It's not like antifreeze or something like that. I'm just saying, feel like outside.
I guess you could put antifreeze on it. I can't really say what
I'm just
that would
wondering if-
maybe do to the propylene glycol. I don't know if that would affect the stones or not. So
You want in your
Fire
hands.
and heat up the water.
No, I feel even outside. You're saying you throw in your tool sheet, you know, your trailer over there and you take off the job site.
You just use your whiskey.
That's gone.
Yes, I tend to just hold right at the tip like this, and obviously there's all this weight here that can swing, so it's a bit hard to do. Another way to do this is to hold the end of the tool and push this way, but I've gotten into the habit of doing this, so that's what I do. And
You wouldn't take the handle off.
some people do that. Like with slicks,
Oh, yeah.
you know, with a longer slick, it's forget holding the bevel down. But there's a trick I've found I use. I get my other plastic rectangular bucket and I put it, you know, I put this on the ground and I put that bucket to the side in such a way that it acts as a guide, the edge of it, and I can just basically hold it there and that way I don't have to worry about supporting the weight. But yeah, you can tap the handle and remove it. Some people do that.
Sugimoto-san did it at Silmar with Russ. Russ had a slick that was about 3 feet long, and so he stuck it up on a block.
What he does though is, he rests a portion of or rests a handle on a block somewhere that gets in the right bevel at a distance from the stone, and then wraps his hand around it right there.
That's exactly what I do. That's exactly what I don't spin it though. Like with that green bucket I have over there, I'm able to hold it against the wall of the bucket and just slide.
Yeah.
So I can keep this, because I think swinging will not make a flat bevel.
I've tried it and it comes out
Yeah?
flat, you know,
Okay.
the segment of a cone.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. Huh. I'll try that next time. I haven't done that with my. This is after 2000. Well, I've got a plastic cage over there I used, but if you didn't have, and there's a cheap from here, like $8, you get a little plastic thing. Or you could use your sashigane and a little calculator work, and on a board you can lay all your angles off and slide it against that and go, okay.
And then you use like a rough diamond stone to get the initial bevel if you want to do it.
Yeah, although with this tiny tool, I wouldn't put it on the diamond plate because it'll fall in between the spaces of the,
Right.
doesn't work very well.
And that's the same way I'm gonna have to correct my chisels.
Yeah.
You don't ever use a mechanical, like a plumber, something like that?
I think if you are going to use a grinder, you know, it looks like a good one. Seems like that what you want is a wheel that doesn't burn. A wheel that can be dressed flat easily. And has readily available replacement wheels. And doesn't spin too fast. It's, you want, you know, and really ideal is water cooled. So.
Pedestal type belt sander is a potential way to do it too.
Sure, I mean, I've seen those
Because
guys.
you don't get so much heat off the stone either.
That's a good point. I know the guys that make knives.
Like a pedestal
often
type
use
belt
those.
sander, you can get the ones with those.
Okay, I gotta back off here.
You set up the guide it right in.
2, 3, 4, 5.
It's not bad.
No, it's such a small amount of wear, I don't need to bother flattening that off.
Just picked up a big older one from the estate sale.
These things just get here and things like this.
Mixing that up.
There's no that
And I'm just about finished, so
expensive system for sharpening.
the smaller the blade, the quicker you can, the fewer strokes you need and the quicker you can get it sharp. Sharpening can take a long time though. When you inadvertently go astray and create bevels, you don't want askew angles or rounding, and that can, I know sharpening can be quite frustrating, but you know, the dull tool is the dangerous tool, and I'm sure most of you have heard that, because it forces you to use more power, protrude the blade more, it's the damage the work more. And really sharpening is it's a foundation skill to doing work with hand tools. So, you know, the sooner you start, the sooner you get proficient at it. And it's really a process of just doing, observing result, do it again. Like if you sharpen on your stones for 3 or 4 minutes or whatever and go back to work and you start to pare the tool and it's not cutting well, you don't keep paring, you go, oh, I didn't sharpen right, you go back, sharpen. Instead of, well, I'm not going to sharpen again because I've sharpened. So, I mean, it may sound funny, but we all kind of, you know, will do that. So.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, you're on that. I think it's good to keep in mind too, what is actually saving time too, what is actually efficient, struggling with the tool that isn't working well, taking the time to get it working right.
Yeah, and most job sites won't pay for you to take the time to get the tool working right, so.
Right, but it's what is it, stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime sort of economy?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on, sometimes you get older chisels and it's just like some of the older distant saws are just better metal, straight
Yeah.
through from one end to the other. And I know a lot of the newer chisels are not necessarily great, like for some of our shop chisels, for some of our guys who we really don't want to give our big chisels to necessarily for a while yet. But some of the older ones that you can get that have got rust on them or whatever, any particular.
I agree with you, the older steel's better steel. It doesn't seem logical when you can manipulate metal so completely, but I think it's analogous to when you first came to this gigantic forest with 300-foot conifers everywhere you looked. Logging's pretty easy, you know, whatever's near you, you cut it down, you got a big tree. And then as you exhaust the supply, you got to go further afield, further up valleys, cut bigger roads, deeper things, helicopters, all that. Well, when people usually found metals in the early days, because, you know, or oil, it was oozing out of the hole in the ground. There was a bank cut away and you saw the vein. And indeed, when you got into sharpening stones and ores suitable for steel and the sands for that, they were abundant and easy to find and higher quality. And as that got exhausted, you get into poorer quality stuff.
And also on rolling garage sales and stuff, I see Sheffield, England on it's you know, usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Old stuff with Sheffield, England.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's a steel making sound.
how to bring them back as far as sharpening, is it just the same thing from the rough?
Yeah.
from
I
the
mean, often an
side
old tool's got a
to
problem
the
because it's
long?
rusted and pitted.
Yeah,
So you've got to, and with Western chisels, it can be an onerous task to work the back because it's just this huge slab of metal, especially a bigger timber chisel. You can be there for like your lifetime. And a lot of people, because it's such an onerous task, they only do the last inch and a bit. And it's easy to end up with a chisel that's flat and a ramp. And it tends to be a tool that works elevated most of the time. So.
I was talking to some folks at the conference who were talking about rehabilitating old slicks, and they'll start with a belt sander. Just take, you know, you gotta get down through that material for you to get started. I'm sure you have to be very careful.
You don't heat them up, yeah.
You want a good.
So sharpening a knife is the same thing
Yeah.
as marking knife, same principle?
Yeah, I'll grab a marking up and do a quick couple of seconds on that. When you're in tutorials, particularly a light oil, usually wherever I had that oil, I don't know, but
I put it back, boy.
thanks.
when we get.
But I mean, it's better because why?
Because the oil helps to keep rust off the
As
tool.
opposed to any other one.
Some oils will go rancid.
Well,
Yeah,
and tea tree oil won't go rancid and doesn't attract vermin. Whereas canola oils or any vegetable oils, if you've got it in leather or whatever, well, I mean, you get mice, you get this, you get whatever, and they're attracted, whereas they don't. When I was in Australia, a friend, a guy I know distills tea tree oil, he says, we don't have rodent problems. They won't touch it. Which I thought was
okay,
interesting.
this is the last one I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna have to stop. So,
What's the difference between the steels? Cause like you
okay, yeah, if you look in tool catalogs for Japanese tools, they'll get this white steel, blue steel thing, and, it's like, well, which one do I buy? I buy one of these things, and how come you can spend $100 or you can spend $1,000? I don't get that. Well, the two principal kinds of steel, there's three. The ultra deluxe for making swords out of is called tamahagane, and that's made from iron sand, and they forge that once a year in this big earthen furnace, processing sand down into these colorful